I wanted to ask first, if any of you guys bought a home before? You've been? Okay. You guys ever bought? Okay. So I did pass out those toolkits, the home buyer toolkits. It has a lot of great information about the home buying process. You can take that home with you and review that. I'm just going to be giving a brief overview of the process here tonight. And then I also left those notepads too, so if you guys want to take any notes throughout the segments, feel free to do that as well. So when I thought about the title of this series, Adulting 101, Learn What Life Hasn't Taught You, I thought about my own industry with real estate, and I don't think I've learned much at all growing up about real estate, either through school or through life. And thinking about it, I think I did get education from one source, and I think a lot of us get education from this source. And it's a pretty well-known real estate institution, HGTV. I used to watch a lot of House Hunters. We got our friends Chip and Joanna Gaines. Gotta love them, right? What's funny about these shows like House Hunters is that these home buyers will go out with their real estate agents. They'll see maybe 3 homes. They'll sit down, they'll talk about the pros and cons of each house. They'll have a nice little conversation, they'll make a decision, and then it just shows them moving right in, right? So these shows, they make the process seem so easy that I know for myself, when I bought my own first home and when I became a realtor, I was shocked at how different the process actually is than it is on these shows. So I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the home buying process here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about the value and duties of a realtor and having a buyer agent. And I'm also going to discuss some of the benefits of buying a home and renting versus buying. So I'm going to get into that here first, why even buy a home. So I did want to mention first that there are some benefits of renting in certain situations. Maybe it's a short-term situation like a temporary job. You may not want to commit to an area for more than a year or two, or you could be testing a market, a school, a neighborhood. You could be working on your financial qualifications in order to buy a house. So maybe you have to increase your credit score or pay off some debt, or you could be saving for a down payment. And Chandler and Dave are going to talk more about the whole mortgage side of this and how it actually is easier to qualify for a mortgage than most people think it is. So they'll discuss more about that. But the other good thing with renting is that there's typically no or minimal maintenance costs. So if something goes wrong, you can normally just call your landlord. They'll come out and fix it for you, right? When we get into the downsides of renting, it's funny, the first thing I always think about for some reason is pets. Chandler knows I used to do a lot of rental listings, so I'd have a lot of tenants calling me all the time. They say, I really want this house, but the problem I'm having is I have 4 dogs or 8 cats. I had one guy call and he told me he collected lizards. So this guy wanted to keep like 50 tanks around the house. And it's becoming harder to find rental properties that allow pets. Landlords can say no pets altogether. They can put limits on the type or number of pets. And some landlords are even charging pet rents now too. So you may have to pay like $25 per month per pet, which sounds crazy, but people are doing that now. With rentals, you usually are subject to your landlords. Maybe your landlord doesn't maintain the home as well as you'd like them to, or they don't communicate as well as you'd like them to. You do have to deal with that, unfortunately. I've heard people say they want to be able to make some changes, like paint some rooms, do some updating to the house. But typically, you're not going to want to put your own money into your landlord's house, and some landlords don't allow that anyway. Rent prices increase over time. So as a tenant, you're only protected for the price of your lease for the lease term. So as soon as that term is over, your landlord is able to continually increase the rent on that property. But most importantly, when you're renting, you're paying monthly to your landlord, so you're not building wealth or gaining a valuable asset. So I'm going to get into that here next. The slide will move. Come on. I need my tech guy, Andrew. Could be the internet.
I'm funny.
There it is. Got it.
Just stand right there. It seems like you're working on your right.
So we get into the benefits of buying homes, kind of the opposite, but first thing I put is pets. You can have as many as you want, right? You hear about homeownership as the American dream. You can take pride in your home, fix it up, paint it, decorate. But most importantly, like I said, is that your home is an asset. So it'll typically appreciate in value over time. So as you pay down your mortgage on that property, you retain the value, the equity that's in that home. And this picture here gives a good example of that. If we say this home is worth $100,000, if we have a mortgage of $40,000 on that property, that means we're holding equity of $60,000 in that house. As you pay that mortgage down, if you pay it off early or whether you do it 30, 25, 15 years, as soon as that mortgage is paid off, you don't have a house payment anymore on that home, and you do own the equity that's still held in that home. On top of this, the rental costs are so high in our market, you guys may have noticed that many times it's cheaper to buy a house. So interest rates are very low right now. So rental payments are often higher than what a mortgage payment would be on the same house. So let's say you do want to buy a home. What are the next steps? I wanted to mention first that we kind of have this Amazon mentality now where if we want something, we just go online and buy it, right? And that's kind of crept into the real estate industry as well, where we have all these third-party sites like Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, and many potential home buyers, when they're thinking of buying a home, they're just hopping right on these websites and they're starting to look at houses. And at this point, they may not even know if they even qualify for a mortgage and how much they qualify for it if so. They may not know anything about the home buying process, who they're speaking to when they reach out for more information, and what's even in their best interest during this process. So I highly recommend that before you go online and you start looking at houses, that you first come up with an action plan. And to come up with an action plan, I think the best steps you can take are to first meet with a full-time realtor that's a buyer representative and speak to a local lender about loan options to get a financial plan and a goal in place. So like I said, Dave and Chandler are going to talk more about the whole mortgage side of this, but I want to get into now the benefits of a realtor and having a buyer's agent. I think there could be a perception of real estate agents in the market that they're just trying to sell as many homes as possible. It's all about volume. But I think many people don't realize that agents are actually bound by law to perform a whole list of duties on behalf of their clients. So the main thing that we do is protect and promote the best interests of the client, affording them all the duties of real estate agency. And going through that list of duties, we have to be obedient to our clients within the law. We need to maintain loyalty to our clients. We need to act with due diligence and disclosure. We need to keep our clients' information confidential. We need to keep accurate accounting, and we need to act with reasonable care. I also want to mention on top of this is that not all real estate agents are realtors. So realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and are bound by an additional code of ethics on top of what the law requires in the state of New York. So if you don't already know, the way agency works in the industry is that when someone goes to sell their home, they'll typically hire a listing firm, a listing agent, to put that property on the market, represent them, and manage their interests. All the buyers that are out there on the market will typically have their own buyer agent, and that's considered buyer agency. It's standard and common in the industry for home sellers to pay all real estate commissions. Those are paid to the listing firm, and that's split with the buyer agent's firm. So it's essentially a free service to have a buyer agent working for you, the buyer. I did want to mention too that it is legal in our state for the listing agent to represent both sides of the transaction. This is called dual agency. It is legal with permission from both parties, but I do highly recommend that you do get your own agent to make sure you're fully represented through the transaction. So getting back to shopping online, when people are reaching out for more information on properties, many times they're reaching out directly to the listing agents of those sellers. So remember, those listing agents represent those sellers, the seller's best interests. So, and the same is true for new construction. So all the builders that you see around here, like Ryan Homes, Richmond American, they have model homes. They have reps that work in their model homes. These reps, they work for the builder and they represent the builder. So it's really important that whether you are thinking of building or buying a resale home, that you do hire a buyer's agent to work with you. In those booklets, there is a section on interviewing an agent, so there's questions you can ask, issues to discuss when you are talking to buyers. When you do choose an agent, you'll typically sign a representation agreement with that agent stating that they'll help you through the process, and it goes over all those duties that I went over. Your agent should meet with you to go over the whole process and come up with an action plan. If you haven't already spoken to a lender, they should refer you to a trusted local lender to assess your finances and get you pre-qualified for a mortgage. They'll assess your wants and needs in a home, so we'll find out how much you're thinking of spending, location, bedrooms, bathrooms, lot size, everything that you're looking for in a home, we'll get that from you. We'll then set you up on a listing search and start sending you listings at that point. And this is the fun part that you see on TV when we start showing you houses. So we'll start showing as many houses as you want to see until you find the house that you're interested in. Once you are interested in a home, your agent should start gathering as much information as possible about that house. They should do what's called a market analysis, where we look at comparable sold properties near this home to make sure that the house is worth what the sellers are asking for it. We also can address any concerns or questions before we put an offer in. Like maybe this house could be in a floodplain. Maybe we have questions about how old the roof is, the HVAC, the HOA. There's a lot of questions we can ask before putting an offer in on a property. We'll then go over that market analysis and counsel you on market conditions and negotiating strategies. And then we'll review the sales offer contract with you and add any additions or contingencies to that contract. The contracts that we use in the state of Virginia, they're all written by attorneys, and they're typically about 8 pages to 40 pages long, depending on all the forms and addenda that we add to those contracts. So a contingency is a condition included in the offer to purchase a home that must be satisfied before the sale can close. If a contingency is not satisfied, the contract to purchase the home may terminate. So some contingencies that are pretty common that we see a lot are financing approval. So your loan must be approved, obviously, for this contract to go through. Your lender will probably require what's called an appraisal, which is similar to a market analysis, but a licensed appraiser comes out and finds out what they think the property is worth at that time to make sure it's worth what you're paying or financing with the lender. Most buyers will have a home inspection done, so we hire a home inspector to make sure you're happy with the condition, possibly ask for any repairs for the seller to make. And there's a lot of other inspections we can add to the contracts. So maybe this property has a private well, septic system. Do we need to test for termites? Do we want to test for radon gas, lead paint? There's many other inspections we can add to the contract as a contingency. And then most contracts are also contingent on a clear title search. So a title search will be done at the courthouse. Your attorney or your settlement agency will go to the courthouse and make sure that there's no liens on the title, that the title can transfer to you, the new buyer. And then there's all the other main offer terms. So what's our price going to be on our offer? You as a buyer will have closing costs, and those are typically around 2 to 5% of the price. Is that about right, Dave?
Yeah, well, I rarely see them as high as 5.
Yeah.
But, I would say what we typically do on the price points below 400,000, we typically say, look, John, if you ask for 3% in closing costs, 9 times out of 10 you're probably going to be covered.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's when you get to the higher price points, some of those closing costs are fixed.
Yeah, so you don't have to ask for
there's
as
some
much.
economies of scale.
Yeah.
So when you get to a higher price point, you know, a $700,000 house, the closing cost might only be 2%.
Yeah. So closing costs are funds that you have to bring to closing on top of your down payment, but we can ask the seller for assistance with your closing costs, so that can be an offer term that we put in there with our offer. There's also what's called the earnest money deposit. It's a deposit that we put down with our offer, and that shows to the seller that you're committed to the contract and to your offer. How much will that be? And then the settlement date, how soon can we close on this contract? So the contract itself doesn't actually close until we get through all these contingencies. So depending on the type of loan we're doing and the contingencies, contract to closing may take up to 30 to 60 days. If it's a cash purchase with really no contingencies, we can close less than a week. It all just depends on the title search at that point. But 30 to 60 days is normally the normal time frame. So your agent, once the offer is done, your agent will present that offer to the listing agent. Negotiations will then occur, so the contract will go back and forth with any changes. Once both parties agree, fully sign the contract with any changes, and the contract's delivered back to both parties, we're then considered ratified or under contract. And that's when you see homes online, it says pending or under contract. That means they've entered that contract period and they're now pending. So I tell my clients, this is when the race really begins. So at this point, each contingency or inspection that we have is a hurdle that we need to make it over to get to the finish line or closing. So remember all those inspections that we added, all those contingencies like financing, appraisal, we have to make it through all those things without problems and get through them in order to get to the closing table. You see this guy fell on his face. So there's always challenges and problems that come up in most real estate transactions, and sometimes the purchase doesn't work out. So the transactions can be voided and canceled if there's problems with these contingencies. So it's not always as easy as TV, but I did put on there that your realtor will be there as your coach to pick you back up and get you ready for the next home or contract. And we always have challenges that come up, but all the parties that are working in the transaction, so your lender, your settlement agency, your attorney, both realtors, and even your insurance provider, everybody's working together to get the closing done and over the finish line. But once we have made it through all those contingencies, all the conditions have been met, your lender and the settlement agency will prepare all the closing documents. The settlement agency will also get your homeowner's insurance binder. Stephen's going to talk all about homeowner's insurance here later. And then closing will take place at the settlement agency or the attorney's office. You'll sign a whole stack of papers, and that's when you, the buyer, get possession of your new home. So that's kind of a brief overview of the process. Like I said, there's a lot more information in those books, so if you want to read through all that, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds of all the tangents we can take. But the main takeaway I wanted you to have is that when you do decide to buy a home, that you do meet with a realtor as early as possible and talk to a lender. And that's what I got. Any questions? Anybody?
So how accurate is, I mean, you know, people look at homes, they got Zillow, Trulu, and Redfin and all that good stuff. So how accurate is the information that's on there compared to what's actually happening? So what I mean by that, like when I look at a house, I'm like, hey, can I go look at this, John?
Yeah.
And you're like, it's already under contract.
Yeah, it happens a lot. So our multiple listing service, the MLS that we use, pushes out to all these third-party sites through IDX feed, and it doesn't always update as well as it should. So I'll have clients that call me all the time. They'll say, I want to see this house, and I'll look it up, and it's actually under contract. So some of these sites, like Zillow, Truly, they just don't update as quickly as they should. There's also, some of the information doesn't come over correctly. Sometimes the information isn't fully correct that's on those sites. So if I have clients that are using Zillow, I always tell them to send the listing to me, and I can kind of verify everything and make sure that it's all correct, that it's actually on the market and everything.
So is there a site that you recommend? Let's say that we're in the process of getting your information as a realtor. Is there a site that us end users can actually start looking at before we even talk to you, just to make sure that we're getting the most current information?
Yeah, I mean, they're all about the same, to be honest. I mean, I use Zillow when I was looking. I mean, Zillow has some, people have different opinions of Zillow in the industry. But I don't think any app is really better than any other one. We do send out listings directly. So when I mentioned the listing search, we do send out listings directly to you anytime the properties hit the market. But yeah, it's kind of just hit or miss how accurate it is. But most of my buyers do, especially first-time home buyer millennials. Everyone's kind of using Zillow, and they're looking on that site. So yeah.